Welcome back, everyone. And sorry I had to cut off your favorite song there, Mark Z, but we got a deciding game number 5 of this semifinal series between GCU and Tempo Storm to get into.
And no surprise, once again, GCU back on the blue side. And I think this series has kind of devolved into, can Selfie carry hard enough to offset the side lanes? Because this is the second game in a row where we saw Quas was forced onto a standard-ish champion. First time it was Cho'Gath, this time Galio. And while he plays these picks fine, it limits his carry potential, and he kind of plays more as a role player tank, which you're fine with because that's one of the ways that they lost game 2. So you take out one of those win conditions, and now Selfie, now that he's no longer playing these crazy snowball champions like the Jace and the Zed and things like that, and if he just picks a hyper carry that they guarantee a good matchup in with the counter pick that you're guaranteed to have on red side, I feel like this could be a situation where it's, can Selfie carry versus the side lanes of GCU?
Right, and the one side lane we haven't really seen step up from the side of GCU has been Rikara. We came into the night and we're like, all right, Rikara is the best, he's the best marksman we have in the Challenger Series. Hasn't necessarily made a bleep on our radar whatsoever. Even in the wins, it's really been about Fly taking over with him and Santorin having, the ability to control these team fights, and Solo kind of is getting big enough to do whatever he wants to on picks like Gnar.
That's the thing is, now that they're back on red side here, it does feel like Tempo Storm probably can't afford an R ban, depending on what else they go for. But like you said, Rikara not being able to take over a game necessarily. They had a fair amount of gank pressure out of Santorin thus far. Feels like GCU wants these slow, even early games, and then they're able to win through objective control. Tempo Storm wants to snowball really hard early on, preferably through mid lane. Top lane, if Quas can get one of his signature champions, and then once they have their leads, they start controlling objectives. If the game is equal, it feels like that does go in Tempo Storm's favor.
Right, and if they snowball through the mid lane and have an equal bot lane, that means that they're able to take most of the dragons in this series as well, so they're able to pressure early on when they have so many mountain drakes, and be able to sustain themselves up when they have so many ocean drakes in this series. But instead, we're going to wind up seeing a couple of unique bans here for GCU, the Jace and the Alawi, which are kind of standard right now, but they also take the Blitzcrank away from Sheep, which does leave the Thresh open as a potential first pick. We'll see what Tempo Storm decides to ban out as their last one, as they kind of have the mandatory bans of a Caitlyn and a Zac. Elise would be one, but the Kalista has risen in priority.
So the Kalista is banned out this time around. This does open up a Galio potentially. I think GCU used it better in some senses than Tempo Storm did, where when Fly had it, it gave him a really even matchup. Or, excuse me, he was doing fine versus the Jace. He did fall behind in CS, but he was able to influence side lanes a little bit before, he ended up getting smashed. But now that the Jace is off the table, you would think it would be priority, but instead they're going to go with the Thresh and allow Tempo Storm a crack at it. We have seen more Rek'Sai focus from them, given the fact that it feels like Santorin is full-on tank mode jungler with the Sejuani and the Maokai being the two that he's focused down.
Yeah, well, the Thresh being picked up, I mean, if Tempo Storm decides to grab up the Galio for themselves, they were content to pick the Gnar into it and kind of, have Solo go pretty much even in that matchup, even though he necessarily get huge advantages until, post-level 9 or whatever, and he blew that flash out of the brush. But it's going to be Tempo Storm going to try and shoot for the Rek'Sai. They pick the Galio here. We could maybe expect a Gnar in response, but maybe Quas doesn't want to play that Gnar, that Galio matchup. Maybe he wants to have something else for himself.
It is maybe a situation where you do see a little bit less Galio, as there it is, actually locked in for the side of Tempo Storm.
Never mind.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're right that here's where you'll probably see the Gnar. Maybe Tempo Storm's thinking, hey, Quas, like we were just saying, if Quas goes stable, we get Selfie a good super strong counter pick in the mid lane where he's able to hyper scale. Quas did not get smashed in that lane. He had to play with the fact that his opponent got a red buff early on. He was still mostly able to go even. The matchup does get worse and worse as time goes on, as you complete things like the Black Cleaver and these kinds of items, as once again you see the Gnar locked in. So, I mean, Quas did his job in that way where he held onto the lane as long as he could, and by the time he was starting to really lose control of the lane, the rest of the team was able to snowball, and he continued to play a great front line for the team. So we'll have to see if that's kind of how this game breaks out again. GCU hovering that Orianna, one of the strongest blind counter picks right now in the game from the mid lane. They're going to grab that up right away, because it had been getting banned out a decent amount by Tempo Storm.
Yeah, it was banned out a lot in the second ban phase, so they were able to secure something that Selfie was going to be able to pick into it. It was banned out once or twice in the first ban phase as well. So the Orianna comes through here in game number 5. Now we kind of developed our own little meta game in this best of 5 series, one of the things that we highlighted at the beginning of the show day. And it looks like the Viktor may wind up being the pick they go for anyway, saying, hey, you have a safe pick. We're going to pick something stable, has a lot of wave clear, and Selfie carried on it last game.
The old Viktor Orianna meta is back again, everybody. Hope you guys didn't miss it too much. Ori has always been around. She didn't really go anywhere, but Viktor had fallen off for a little bit. Not that he was bad, just that other people were feeling things a little bit more. They liked the Talia for a little bit and stuff like that. Now the Viktor is back in full force. And and we have a couple positions already locked in. Tempo Storm has their jungler, whereas GCU has the support. So you might see some offset bans here. Tempo Storm bans out that Maokai. If you're banning that, you're probably banning the Sejuani, unless you think it's not really that big of a threat. It didn't look that great last game. It was a game that was snowballed on pretty hard around the mid lane, and Santorin had to keep going back through to try and hold on, as well as repeatedly trying to fend off ganks in the mid lane. The Taric ban, surprisingly.
Interesting.
Taric was buffed on this patch. It was one of those champions. I mean, a lot of champions were changed on 7.14. They changed the way the charge system works on the heal, as well as how the passive from your auto attacks reset the cooldown. They instantly grant you a charge now, I believe. A couple changes overall, so maybe they had some reason to think that Tempo Storm would prioritize that now. And there's the Gragas ban, so looks like they are forcing that Sejuani again, and you can understand it. It did look a lot weaker than the Maokai that we had seen.
Yeah, so potentially stuck on the Sejuani, although it does leave open, the pick of the litter for both of these marksmen on the bottom side of the map. Tristana is actually going to get banned away, so they're not going to have Reven on a later game scaling hyper carry, maybe forcing him onto something like the Jhin. The Ashe is still available, of course, as well. Varus, something we haven't seen quite yet. Yeah,
not too surprising to see the carries hit avoided a little bit in the bot lane, just because if you're banning something out, you're banning out your own pool. And here we see the Varus being hovered, probably going to get locked in. This is what we were talking about, some of the differences between Freeze and Reven potentially. Freeze going for a lot more of those AD carry, hyper-focus, or hyper-scaling champions like the Caitlyn. Kalista, not necessarily hyper-scaling, but still very lane-dominant in play. Varus, much more utility-focused, so that's why you're tending to see Reven go for that champion. So overall, both teams kind of going for that. Probably wouldn't be a surprise to see the Jhin locked in here and GCU end up with a super standard team comp.
Yeah, it looks like they might be going for the Sejuani again. So if the Jhin gets locked in as the last pick overall, it'll pretty much be a rinse and repeat of the last game's composition, only swapping out the Vladimir for something a little bit safer in the mid lane.
That's something I would really like to see for Fly, given the fact that we talk about how Vladimir against Viktor is generally down pressure. He got ganked early on, and he kept getting shoved in. He had to change up his build path to try and stabilize. Made another mistake where he lost his summoners, instantly gets punished, and then the game's getting out of control.
That's different.
Looks like we spoke a little too soon with the Orianna pick bringing a lot more utility in the mid lane. I guess they decided that they're fine going for a little bit more hyper scaling of a AD carry themselves this time around, go for the Kog'Maw.
Hey, we said that we wanted to see Rikara be the side lane that steps up this game, so they're putting him on the latest of late game hyper carries here in the Kog'Maw pickup. And it looks like that they might want to be going for something a little bit different from the side of Sheep. He's had his Thresh taken away and his Blitzcrank banned out, so they're going for another playmaking support, the Bard, coming out for him.
Surprised to see the Bard come through. It is a champion that has a lot of playmaking potential, has a high barrier of execution as well. It's one of those champions where when you mess up, you look really bad on it. So it's obviously a champion you want a lot of mastery with before you pick it in competitive play. Sheep gonna have to go out and prove. I don't think we saw him on it too much. I don't think so. He had a couple games, I believe, during the regular season of the Bard. Not all the games were broadcast, so I don't believe I remember watching it directly, but he is a player who is always known as a playmaker. That's why you see the Blitzcrank and the Thresh prioritize, and they did not want to fall back onto a Braum in something where he just kind of sits and tries to protect Reven during the laning phase. They want him to be able to get onto the map and make these plays that can help snowball the game for his team.
Yeah, specifically, he now has the magical journey to get somebody like Selfie, if he has an advantage, to the other lanes even better, to spill over those advantages, has more of an ability to, get into these interesting positions to contest these objectives that Tempo Storm have been liking to get once they solidify, a tower advantage in the mid lane. So a different look to Tempo Storm's composition, a very similar look to, well, almost similar look for what GCU is going to be doing, but now they have a later game scaling AD carry in the Kog'Maw, and now, they have a little bit more eggs in the Rikara basket, which they haven't done all best of 5.
Yeah, not too much. I think this is a series that will be heavily influenced by the jungler early on, because this time around, Wiggily has the Rek'Sai again, does not have that super abusive path in the early game that you get on the blue side with the Rek'Sai. So if he can step up and have another good performance around mid lane, heavily pressure that lane, Orianna can get a little bit exploited. While it does have a relatively safe laning phase, doesn't have great mobility, no gap closer, no sanguine pool available. So if you can open her up, that is something that can get exploited over and over again, especially if you start having things like the Galio start roaming mid, get Quas involved in these plays as opposed to just leaving them on an island to kind of hold lane versus this Gnar that's going to slowly win that matchup. Yeah,
and GCU also has an interesting kind of team fight composition as well. You have the command Gnar kind of combination where you have the ball put onto the Gnar who jumps into the fray, or the Sejuani to just deliver that ball into the middle of a fight. We'll see if Tempo Storm are actually going to be going for any sort of team fights whatsoever, though. They were content to kind of divide and conquer on the map and only really go for team fights when they felt advantageous to do so.
In this situation, though, Tempo Storm has 100% kind of standard 5v5 team comp. GCU is the one with a little bit more flexibility, with Gnar being able to split relatively effectively versus the Galio. But if we see now anything out of Tempo Storm, it's that they rely much more on the playmaking in the early game to get their leads and then snowball through with that than they are about any of these games going even, because we haven't seen a game at 25 minutes that was really even. Pretty much every time there was a big gold lead for one of these two teams.
Also, that means that we'll keep our eyes peeled as we head into the later stage of this game number 5. It's all tied up at 2 games apiece. This is match point for either one. Will it be Tempo Storm, the number 3 seed, upsetting Gold Coin United, who are the number 2 seed, to make it to the Challenger Finals? Last split was an all-United event. United is waiting there. Will it be GCU or Tempo Storm that meets them, though?
It'd be very impressive for Tempo Storm, because this was a team that started the regular season off very strong. They started to peter out a little bit, not because they started dropping more series. They only lost to United and GCU. It wasn't like they were losing the worst teams, but they did look like they were struggling a little bit more than GCU, who actually was able to beat United in their last week, where Tempo Storm was struggling against Delta Fox, the last place team in the league. So it was a situation where coming in, you're saying, okay, GCU seems to have all the momentum going into this series, especially after game 1. You're thinking, oh my God, we might be on for a blowout. Tempo Storm bounced back in game 2 off some flex picks. Game 3, those get taken care of, and you're saying, it looks like GCU has a handle on this series. But game 4 rolls around. Selfie wakes up in the biggest way possible, takes over that game completely with the help of Wiggily. And now in game 5, it's do or die time. And like we were saying at the beginning of the day, whoever shows up today will be the team that's going to win it.
Yeah, and so far it's been an alternating of who actually has been able to do so. And for Gold Coin United, it would be very, unexpected for them not to make the finals again. I mean, this is the team that took, basically in the promotion tournament, took 2 LCS teams to a full best of 5 and just barely didn't promote against Team Liquid and just barely didn't promote against Team Envy. And to fall to Tempo Storm, who are coming in with, well, some LCS experience of their own, a retooled roster for the Challenger Series, would be quite unexpected and quite a feat for Tempo Storm, who, I mean, at that point would be the furthest their organization's gotten in the Challenger Series so far.
A good position to do so this game. Have a lot of strong picks on their side. I mean, just generally across the board, you would say a lot of these are considered stronger in the meta. I mean, Galio, Gnar are pretty even, but then you have the Rek'Sai, you have the Varus. The Bard is a little bit weaker than the Thresh for sure, and Ori may be better than Viktor, but both those pretty close matchups overall. We're going to have to see who can execute better early on. I wouldn't mind seeing Santorin actually get something going around the top side. We've seen so much focus on the bot side for Santorin, constantly going for these kind of sneaky little lane ganks and sitting in brushes and trying to counter gank and read Wiggily and counter out his aggression before his team can go for a more controlled approach to the game. Here, Quas early on are asking Santorin a little bit. He has the smite though. This should be all but guaranteed. Just
says hello to Santorin Sejuani. He does hit level 3. Looks like they're not going to be going for pincer move, as Gnar is content just to sit there and see us under tower. And while Santorin has been going for the bottom side kind of counter ganks, a lot of that was because the first 3 games of this series, Freeze was in, and Tempo Storm was playing very heavily on the bottom side. They subbed in Reven game number 4. They switched the priority for Wiggily to gank mid lane and get Selfie ahead, and Reven was fine pretty much doing things on his own, even had Sheep roaming around on the Blitzcrank and was still going even against Rikara.
Even though Reven didn't do a ton to take over the game, say, oh my God, Reven totally revitalized this team, it does give a different look, because we talk about how much more focused Freeze is on winning lane a little bit than Reven in terms of like the approach, and that might have been what they needed to free up Wiggily to heavily focus that mid lane.
You mentioned that the priority for solo on the top side has been a little non-existent for the side of Gold Coin United. Well, he did wind up getting a red buff early on in game number 4. He wasn't really able to snowball advantages till he made some for his own by blowing a flash. We'll see now as Fly gets hit up by Wiggly's Prey Seeker. Now level 6, he won't be able to jump on him, just decides to walk away down towards the bottom side. One of the interesting things here too is the fact that we've had double teleport compositions from Tempo Storm. We have cleanse on Selfie in a couple of these matchups. This time around, everything is even. 1 teleport, 2 heals, ignites for the supports.
Very surprising to point out, actually. There's always been a little bit of a mismatch in some regards. Wiggily keeping that pressure up around mid, goes to the flash on Burrow.
Yeah, gets it down on the fly, but he's going to be able to pop the heal and just jet set himself out of there. Meanwhile, on the bottom side, the jungler showing there. MadLife goes for a flash play, but there's a magical journey coming in from Sheep to keep his ADC safe.
Both teams getting aggressive in exactly the way that you would expect. GCU, they have the Thresh who can go for those aggressive flash lantern plays, wants to open up on the bot lane, especially getting that Kog'Maw going. At the same time, Wiggily just hovering around mid lane, forcing down around there. The heals are traded, the flashes are traded, no team gets any advantage.
So summoner spells being traded. No big advantages gained, which means that we're going to end up having potentially a little bit of a slow start. It has been a little uncharacteristic for both of these teams to have a lot of pressure in the early game, as both of these teams are kind of known as the slow and steady teams in the spring. The summer look of these teams has kind of been a little bit of the same, where as both of them have been able to get some advantages against teams, you know, like Big Gods Jackals, who are now eliminated from playoffs, CLG Academy and Delta Fox, who did not qualify for the playoffs. When they go against each other, it usually winds up breaking point around, you know, the first objective, whether it be a tower, whether it be a dragon, whether it be somebody gaining control of a lane because of a gank that has gone in their favor. Whereas a lot of these teams now, or sorry, not a lot of these teams, these two teams specifically have been gaining advantages through CS and being able to get lane advantages and such. As we see now, the Kog'Maw actually winning out on the bottom side just because of that flash aggressive play from MadLife.
Coming out the better of those two gank attempts. That said, Selfie is in a decent spot. He's going to catch this wave, shove it in, and looks like Fly's already on his way back decently to catch a lot of that wave. So small advantage is traded. Sheep moving down into Rikara, though. He could be out of position now. Yeah,
Rikara might be a little bit too far forward. Pops the heal. Does want to get in the flash. He walks backwards, gets him burrowed on here. The Ignite is been used already, and first one goes over to Reven.
Way too far forward by Rikara there. They don't really have much vision control at all down on that bot side. He's trying to CS, thinking it's 1v1 between him and Reven. They use that magical journey. We're talking about Sheep on Playmakers, able to find the opening for that first blood. Good play there.
This is a little bit greedy from Kog'Maw. If you look at how everything has stacked up. MadLife had gone back to buy. We saw Reven go back to buy. We saw Sheep go back to buy. He was the only one that stuck around. Maybe just wanted to complete an item for himself, but he winds up paying the price for it instead of being able to pay the price of the item.
Yeah, there you see it was a little bit of a misplay here by Tempo Storm. You see the knock up there by Wiggily. The chain CC misses a little bit by Sheep, but sort of option coverage because Rikara was bouncing back and forth, and the fact that he turned around was what gave him the unburrow. They get that knock up, and they're able to bring all the damage they need to find that kill. So well played in the end. And there we get to see a big first blood for Reven. We talk about how Freeze the more lane dominant one, but Reven was no slouch either during the regular season. To be fair, he had some good performances as well.
Yeah, Reven, of course, had been able to run away with a couple of the games that he was in. However, that first blood kill does a lot for him as far as mitigating the CS advantages Kog'Maw had, not only to get him extra gold to even that one up, but it also gives him time to catch up in the CS department. So while there's still a bit of a CS advantage on the top side, and maybe the jungler gold being the big difference here, Goldcoin United's lead has been cut from about a 600 gold advantage because of their bottom lane CS advantage, now to only just 100 or 200.
Overall, an even game. And the big play here coming around the mid lane again. Still flashes available for Fly.
Yeah, he will have to flash right from the Chaos Storm from Viktor on the bottom side. A fight has been broken out. Santorin is around in the area. Quas is going to come in with the Hero's Vengeance, but Rikara picks himself up a Vengeance kill down onto Reven. Now, you see Quas getting stunned up, but the taunt does wind up landing. Santorin and MadLife, though, should just be able to walk away from this one.
Yep, Santorin has flash if he needs it in there once again. The trade ganks coming in at the exact same time. Reven gets the, Wiggily gets the flash out of mid lane, but Reven's gonna go down to bot lane to the gank attempt by MadLife and Santorin. That said, they were chunked out pretty heavily, and it looks like Tempo Storm is gonna be able to transition this one into an Infernal Dragon. Both teleports have been blown in the top side for laning purposes, and during that time, Quas had roamed down to the bot lane. You see him entering the river right now. I think GCU was just not aware that he was in there, because I don't think they would go for this play otherwise, but they're able to burst through the damage reduction of Reven. Rikara runs away at almost no health. And then Santorin is able to kind of just run out of there. And because Solo did not have a teleport to match, they could not contest that dragon afterwards because Rikara, of course, had to go back to base. Tempo Storm still ends up with the objective advantage. Now that said, that did cost Quas quite a bit of gold. And the fact that the turret's been chunked out pretty heavily by Solo as well. So GCU might be able to recuperate this objective advantage that Tempo Storm has.
So while the focus from Goldcoin United was still kind of on the counter gank on the bottom side, or at least the gank on the bottom side, they inadvertently give Solo advantages by having Quas be the one that gets dragged down over there, since Wiggily was busy focusing on a gank on Fly in the mid lane. So Solo's been able to chunk out that tower a bit, has about a 20 CS advantage for himself. The tower just a little bit above half HP on your screen. So now it's Goldcoin United. They lost out on the Dragon because you mentioned Tempo Storm was healthy enough to convert that one and kind of stay true to the name and keep up the pace of the game.
I think that was also a really interesting situation, just like why was Quas down there? They just got the flash in the mid lane, so they probably felt like they had an advantage to either go down and try and force a 5-man play on the bot turret and get their own gank off down there because Reven was already cutting, or excuse me, not Reven, Wiggily was already cutting through the jungle. But at the same time, GCU jumped that play, so they probably wanted to force on the Dragon or that bot turret. GCU makes their own play at the same time and stops Tempo Storm from being able to convert on a larger advantage.
Well, speaking of advantages, fun fact that I heard from our stats gal on the back, the team that has been ahead in gold at 10 minutes has won every single game this series.
That speaks pretty good for GCU then, huh?
Well, we could just wrap it up and call it a game and go home now, but I think that everybody wants to see the conclusion of this best-of-5 series as the two teams duke it out.
Yeah, I'd feel pretty bad about just calling this one here. This time it's GCU making the early rotation up to the top side. Reven is able to flash out of the Sejuani ultimate. TP gets canceled. Both teams going to back away here, but GCU grabs the summoner advantage.
Yeah.
Tempo Storm, though, going blow for blow so far. This time looking for Fly.
Well, there's 2 summoners for the price of none, but they're going to get a teleport now out of the Gnar. They can go down onto the Orianna. The command shockwave is used to pull Wiggily back underneath the tower. The damage reduction is there from Quas to keep him alive. Now they try to focus down on the solo, who's about to go mega. MadLife, though, cuts off Reven in the rotation here. Lantern Santorin over the wall. And remember, this guy's got no flash from that gank before. Solo just hops forward, throws a boomerang, and says, thank you very much. Picks up a trade kill.
Big mistake out of Reven there. No need to collapse and try and help your team out. They're pulling a 4-man dive versus 2 in the mid lane. If they can't execute that on their own, they're in trouble. They're able to get the kill for Fly for free, and because Reven was, for some reason, rotating down to try and help out there, he gets caught out and gives a trade kill back. Once again, ending up in an even situation off some traded aggression around the bot lane and the mid lane.
No, that's another advantage given over to the Gnar for solo on the top side too. So 30 CS advantage, now picks up a kill. This is really good execution from Tempo Storm to get this dive on Fly though.
Yeah, you see the ultimate not able to hit the turret. Probably worth trying to include that one there. But at the end of the day, they have so many tools to complete this dive against the summonerless Orianna. It's not really too difficult. And here, Reven actually opts into this fight, starts running at him, throwing the hail of arrows down. He just puts himself in a horrible position, gets taken out. Gnar is actually able to clean up that kill. Like you said, as much as you want the Kog'Maw to kind of hyperscale and get as much gold as you can, it's honestly pretty good on the Gnar as well, because he's the one who's going to be in the side lane getting that split push advantage.
So we've seen our share of unique builds so far with Lethality coming back into the meta. We've seen Jhin rise, but we saw Misfortune. We figured Varus would be going along the same kind of line of things, but in this case, Varus is opted into a very early Wit's End. Granted, there's an Orianna, and Kog'Maw will deal a decent amount of magic damage. It's very interesting to see him rush that item extremely early on.
I guess everyone is all inning on the Selfie Please Carry Us train.
I don't know about that one, but Reven's going to be caught out again. These are the things that we talked about when he was subbed in, that he was getting caught out of position a little bit here, but you can't really fault him for this one. There's 4 members diving through on the tower. He actually almost picks up a trade kill on Rikara at the same time because he was tanking the tower.
A little dangerous there by the side of GCU. They are able to find that kill. Gonna be a trade out though because they had used so many resources to find that kill. Tempo Storm rotates down to the mid lane. Gonna grab this turret. Yeah, like you said, I'm surprised to see this Wit's End. We thought potentially a Duskblade, maybe a Ghostblade right away. They go for neither of those. GCU looks like they want to potentially punish that aggression around the mid lane.
Kog'Maw's still in the bot lane since there's a straight up 3v3. The Rift Herald's been recruited and charges the wrong way, unfortunately. Tempo Storm take the backdoor exit.
Able to get out there, a little risky. Santorin, not sure if his ultimate was quite up yet, did not pull the trigger on it either way. Tempo Storm vacates the mid lane, get their reset off, and Rikara is able to grab that turret. Gonna be able to pick up his Blade of the Rune King after that. And this is very dangerous actually on the side of Tempo Storm. While you can put all your eggs in the Selfie basket, I think you would be much happier if your AD carry had a better carry items.
Wit's End shreds magic resistance, right?
Well, that's what I was saying. They're doubling down on the idea of Selfie carrying because he's going to be the one doing all the damage.
Well, they're going to be focusing on the solo, who has gotten some of these early kills in his advantage. The Gravity Field's on the way, the Chaos Sun's burning away, and Wiggly's able to pick up the kill.
Good job by Selfie, spreading that lead around as best as he can. They grab the mid lane turret, they get out of there. Next thing he does is try and get some kills out in the side lanes. Gets the Gnar taken down very early on. And now they're going to continue pushing up in this top lane while Reven is on wave clear duty in the mid lane.
Oh, is this going to be another wraparound here by...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, GCU. They're going to catch out on the Quas, the same play that wound up catching out Reven before. Quas gets the taunt down, but there's no way he could Justice Punch his way out of that one. The box is there, the hook is there, and Rikara now all of a sudden is 3-1 on this Kog'Maw.
Now that said, once again, Tempo Storm coming out a little bit better in these objective trades, able to grab the top turret here. So they're going to get even up the turrets as well as keeping that Infernal Dragon in their favor. So good job by them so far. getting these turrets down, and it looks like they're trying to get this Rift Herald as well. Team GCU is not quite in range.
They're down on the bottom side. It looks like they want to trade the Mountain Drake for the Rift Herald. So you said Tempo Storm maybe getting a little bit of the better for this one, but we'll have to see how they effectively use this one, because Rift Herald hasn't always guaranteed it.
Not always guarantees it, just makes it a lot more likely. And we also talk about how sometimes Mountain's not that effective if you're not in a position to use it. The fact that they have a small gold lead right now on the side of GCU, and they've been able to make a couple of plays, does hint that they'll probably be able to use this Mountain Dragon a little bit better this game than we've seen in some previous games. Once again, GCU going for a wraparound on the Quas potential.
There's the Lantern. MadLife has his flash available. He's going to flay Quas out. Quas has his own flash available, but the hook is going to go. Oh! Sejuani ultimate goes a little bit wide. Didn't know they subbed in Smithy in this game, and Santorin's not going to be able to follow up on the kill.
Unnecessary shot at what is one of the better junglers in ADCS.
This is true. He's definitely come quite far from those days, but
I think a good idea out of GCU there. Quas intelligently saved his flash the last time he got cut off, just kind of died without it, so he had it to escape there. GCU had the tools to still maybe find that kill, even though he was kind of underneath the turret at that point, but missed a couple too many skill shots. He gets out. Well played by Quas to survive there. Still about a 1,500 gold lead for GCU.
Yeah, so GCU maintains the gold advantage, but we do have the Rift Herald on the side. It's actually been picked up by Reven here, so we'll see if you wind up utilizing that one on the bottom side of the map to knock down the last remaining outer tower.
Going for the purple build.
Purple build?
Yeah, he's already got the Wit's End. That's purple. Got to get the Rift Herald, purple trinket.
Maybe going for a Blade of the Rune King off of that Vampiric Scepter, purple item.
Exactly. Like we said, a little surprised not to see a pen build come in.
He's got base skin Varus too, right? So purple Varus.
Ooh, good.
Oh, Darkstar. Okay, purple Varus. But it could potentially be seeing, as the Rift Herald is used here, one of the later game scaling builds to maybe try to combat the fact that this is Kog'Maw by going for the Ginsu's Rage Blade and just doubling down on the on-hit style.
Potentially. It is a bit of a stretch. Looks like Tempo Storm drops the Rift Herald and brings a lot of members down to try and finish off this turret. Santorin trying to get involved, trying to cut it off. Both
He can't block that. He tries. But did you take down the Rift Herald without his tower falling?
Yeah, and that's like what you were saying. You're not guaranteed to get it. That push was relatively telegraphed. GCU was already rotating down there, so by the time the Rift Herald gets in range, he chunks out the turret. But it doesn't mean Tempo Storm has to back off. They're going to keep pushing around the spot lane. So there is a decent amount of wave clear available with the Orianna and Kog'Maw.
Solo's level 11, Quas is only level 10, but Quas has moved down towards the bottom side of the map first. So he will be shoving in and threatening a second tower in the mid lane, this tier 2 tower. But now Gnar has rotated down as well, so he will just be able to keep Quas at bay. And while Tempo Storm is still trying to focus down around this bottom side, Santorin is in his bottom side jungle clearing out vision control to make it less safe for Tempo Storm to stick around because they still have a decent wave clear. Orianna's hovering around that side. Kog'Maw at this point, well, doesn't have the most wave clear potential, still has a lot of damage with the Blade of the Rune King complete.
Kog'Maw definitely the stronger 1v1 champion at this point in the game. If they get into a little bit of a duel, I would assume. Both teams are slowing down a little bit here. Next dragon will probably be the big emphasis, an Infernal Dragon. Tempo Storm wants their second one of the game to continue that kind of late game snowballing for the team fight because, like we said, both these teams are more team fight oriented. So Infernal Dragon plays that extremely well. The split push that can come in from solo is going to benefit from the Mountain Dragon a fair amount as well, but at the end of the day, it is still an Orianna Kog'Maw composition, and you would love to have an Infernal Dragon on your side. Specifically
because of the Kog'Maw. He has that % HP damage. The extra increase from the Infernal Drake would be lovely for him to have. Tempo Storm, I mean, it's an Infernal Dragon. We already established Infernal Dragon's really good. So.
Yeah. No need to stress that one in case anyone didn't get the memo quite yet. Has been playing League for a year and a half or whatever.
But we had the fun fact that whoever's ahead in this series at 10 minutes usually goes on to win the game. But as you mentioned, as we loaded into this game, the 20-minute mark is kind of when that objective spawns. Whatever that team fight erupts has really kind of been whoever has the lead coming out of that fight has been the one to really control the pace of the game.
Right. Even though it was, you know, whoever has the gold lead at 10-minute wins, there was usually a very clear reason why. There was some win condition that was already popping off for that team. And the Jace had a massive CS lead, and they started grabbing objectives as well, and then they took a bunch of turrets.
Vladimir was huge.
Vladimir was huge. Yeah, you had these different reasons. This time around, it does feel not only closer in gold, relatively speaking, but also just in terms of how the comps interact. There's no clear thing where, oh, if Kog'Maw gets big, Tempo Storm's just in trouble. The only one that might have existed like that was if Gnar gets huge, there's nothing Tempo Storm can do. But the Gnar, despite that one kill and the CS lead over the Galio, has not snowballed completely out of control. I think around 17 minutes last game, or maybe it's 2 games ago, he already had his 2-item power spike completed. This time around has not yet reached that Frozen Mallet.
Yeah, so a little bit behind on his itemization compared to, I believe it was just the last game where he got those kills early on, and they were trying to give him advantages on the top side. But this time around, we might just wind up going for an old-fashioned objective team fight. Could be the way that we end this one. This has been overall an extremely impressive series. Both these teams going toe-to-toe, trading blow for blow, forcing this game number 5. Their opponents, E United, had an easy 3-0 on the opposite side where they were able to take down Big God Shackles, but it'll be impressive regardless who makes the finals here.
This is one of the things that we said favored GCU in these kind of even games, was it felt like they had slightly better objective control. And you see here such good vision down around this dragon that's going to spawn in 30 seconds. This is one of the things that felt like they were more coordinated on. The veteran status of MadLife, able to go and help this team figure out where they want to ward. Santorin as well, been around the scene a really long time in comparison to Wiggily. So these are the kind of like intangible situations that experience can come help with this immense vision control. And it's one of the things that might favor GCU if this game goes long and even.
Well, Tempo Storm looks like they might be trying to threaten the mid-tier 2 tower while the dragon has spawned up. The Infernal Drake was the focus for GCU. We'll have to wait and see. The Tempered Fate was actually used there by Bard. I don't know if it landed on anybody. Instead, they're going to wind up going for a fight. They lock down the Santorin and MadLife. MadLife has the flashback. Command Shockwave lands on everybody in the back line. And Rikara is going to start ripping through people on this Kog'Maw. Already, the big front line is down in Galio, and now they're trying to chase down onto Selfie. We'll get a magical journey the heck out of there. Reven's going to walk back to his tower, but that's the kill they need for the dragon.
They get the kills, and they chunk out everyone else on the side of Tempo Storm. They're going to go for the dragon instead of this mid lane turret. It will be a little bit greedy to go for both, given the fact that they only got that 1 kill onto Quas. Solo was not in Mega Gnar form, unfortunately, and the ultimate out of Santorin was a little slow, so multiple members had flashed out by the time that one came back in. We'll take another look at it, and this is why that vision control is so important. You see the Bard ultimate come in, but now they have no vision. They're not sure where exactly they're chasing into. They put the ward down, but then they have to kind of just chase in blindly a little bit. Now they have no one on Kog'Maw. He's untouched. They're trying to kite out. The Shockwave pulls them all back in. Nice ultimate to kind of chain CC there by Santorin. They get that kill. Selfie has to flash away, and it felt like this team might have been able to keep chasing forward a little bit more. Choose not to. Don't want to get greedy. Go get that Infernal Dragon. Even up the objectives. Going to be a 3rd Infernal Dragon spawning soon. So if no one's able to force around the Baron in the next couple minutes, you might see them holding off for another dragon fight. Even
the game code wants this game 5 to be full of fights. They're giving them a Mountain Drake. They're giving them Infernal Drakes. They just really want to have a brawl between these two teams. And
no better team comps to hope to do it either. Both these guys want these 5v5s. And GCU, with that kind of positional advantage from all the vision control that they had, as well as having arguably a little bit stronger of a front line here. Thresh, Sejuani, and Gnar a little bit better than just Galio, Rek'Sai, and Bard in a straight 5v5. I mean, obviously these guys have different strengths. Split push Gnar, global Galio, all these different things when you really break it down. But the attempt onto Reven.
Yeah, Santorin winds up locking down on him already with that ultimate coming up from Sejuani. Tempered Fate locks up everybody involved. The Command Shockwave setup is there, though, and Reven winds up going down.
They find the pickoff onto Reven, 1-4 this time, not having the performance that you're hoping for after the game 4 when you got subbed in, looking decent.
Now GCU, they're all set up to threaten around the Baron Pit area. They're all set up to maybe push on that tier 1 mid tower. You might think that going around the Baron Pit area might be a little bit of a disaster. We had a Kog'Maw who's going to wind up raining down, you know, with his percent HP damage on the W. He has Blade of the Rune King completed, a Ginsu's Rage Blade. When that's stacked up, he's going to be hurting like heck as he just takes down Bard, goes unstoppable here.
Yeah, you know, Tempo Storm does not have complete vision control in this river. They're not exactly sure where they are, trying to walk out to get some vision, not sure that they were on the red buff there. Now they're baiting this Baron, trying to hook on the Wiggily, playing with a little bit of patience here. I like seeing that out of GCU, given the fact that they're not that far ahead, but now Solo's on the flank, hopping on the Selfie.
Yep, he was going to wind up getting the wall. The Gnar against the wall is massive, and they don't even need a Shockwave to clean this one up. Selfie goes down, Galio goes down, and Rikara, welcome to the best of 5.
GCU just executing so well around these objectives in this mid lane. They get the dragon fight, they find some pickoffs after that, continually forcing Tempo Storm to walk up to them and then finding the angles to get these kills. Now Fly playing a little bit of zoning duty, going to make sure that Wiggily cannot use this blast cone to get over. They're going to try and CC him up. He gets into the pit. He
steals it. He steals the Baron. The command shockwave didn't pull him out of the tunnel, and Wiggily, he steals the Baron. Might be enough to keep Tempo Storm in this one against a legendary Kog'Maw.
Oh boy.
Game 5, Mark!
Just when you think GCU's turning on the Afterburner is going to grab complete control of this game, they give away the Baron buff on a little bit of a misexecution on zoning Wiggily out of that. He did not have Flash available. First, we're going to look at this pickoff that came in. Solo on the flank, great positioning, gets the stun, gets the Gnar ultimate back, just complete chain CC on the Selfie, the big carry threat on the side of Tempo Storm. They get the 2 kills. They also picked off Sheep not too long ago, so it should be a relatively free Baron if they are tracking this cooldown onto Wiggily correctly. Nice zoning by Fly, but once he goes this far over the wall, you see him again, just hit the blast cone. That's all they had to do, but they never hit the blast cone. They let him take it. He's able to get into the pit from that and get the smite. It's very difficult to execute these plays correctly. I don't want to be too critical, but you have to hit that blast cone at that point. Once your Orianna ball finds him into the red pit, he has no way of getting in range of the Baron to get that smite if he can't make it to the blast cone. Maybe they thought he still had Flash available, which would kind of negate that importance, but end of the day, big play by Wiggily coming up to save Tempo Storm from having to worry about wave clearing against the Kog'Maw Orianna.
So now we're at a bit of an impasse, Mark. So we've had two interesting things so far. The team that was ahead at 10 minutes usually goes on to win the game in this best of 5. They have every single game. The team who has an advantage at 25 minutes seems to snowball that advantage into a victory. The team who takes Baron wins the game.
So one of those two things is going to be false by the end of this game. And if I had to put my money down, I would say GCU is still favored. It's a good Baron steal. It's going to stall out, stop them from snowballing, but Baron will run out in 1 minute and 30 seconds. Infernal spawns in a minute. So GCU, despite not having this buff, still have a good amount of pressure overall on the map. So you can expect them to set up. And we've seen so far that they execute very well around objectives.
Well, that was a Baron buff that kind of stems the bleeding a little bit too. They don't have it on absolutely everybody. They only have it on 3 of their members, Selfie not being one of them and Quas not being one of them. So they can't exactly send Reven to split push, or I'm sorry, they only have it on 2 members because Wiggily ended up dying. They can't send Reven and Sheep to kind of split push. They need them on wave clear duty as the rest of GCU are pushing up in the mid lane. And they do still have an 8-1-in-1 Kog'Maw who has Blade of the Rune King, Ginsu's Rage Blade, and now a QSS picked up in addition to all that.
Rikara definitely having his best game of the series so far.
Quite the heck of a game to have it on, too. Quite the heck of a game for Santorin to go for this Knight's Vow again, because now he could just partner up there with Rikara, and they'll be A-OK. The locket's been picked up there by MadLife to keep him safe. You have a fully stacked Rite of Ages Orianna, who no slouch at 0, 1, and 6 for Fly. Can keep him alive fairly easily.
Worth noting, there is a lot of MR on the side of Tempo Storm completed already, and Fly does not have any armor pen yet, or MR pen, excuse me. They both have a lot of MR. Not going to even contest this Infernal Dragon. Second one of the game going over to the GCU. Tempo Storm trying to answer instead with a push up on the top side, rotating to meet this wave that Quas has going for him.
They'll be able to get the tower, too, with the last breaths of their Baron buff. Even though Quas pretty much did the work himself, they'll have Reven come over and get the last tap on the tower, and his Baron buff as well will help that out. But GCU on the bottom side, this tower took a little bit of damage. It's still healthy and above half HP, but Fly's inside to recall because the rest of Tempo Storm has recalled away from the top side.
Hopefully Fly has enough money now to buy his Void Staff. It's going to be a really big purchase. Does not actually have it after pushing that wave, and so still a little bit of concern given the amount of MR that has been built on the front line of Tempo Storm. Selfie has his completed, so he has complete one-shot potential at this point on a couple members. He's going to keep scaling up. Does not have his Lich Bane completed yet, which would be the item that really pushes Victors over the top in terms of their burst.
And so that Baron buff that we saw, Baron power play about 1,069 gold, which is less than the 1,500 you get from killing the Baron. Of course, you lost 3 members of your team, and you were able to barely scrape by getting a tower at the end of that, too. But Tempo Storm buying time that they need to get themselves to a position where they feel like they can fight GCU.
Right, you have a plus 1,000 Baron power play in your favor as opposed to a potential plus 5,000 Baron play for GCU, which is
and
kind of what—
potentially a game end.
Yeah, which is what we've expected to see out of the winning team grabbing a Baron, but the gold lead has shrunk overall since, you know, that team fight victory that came in for GCU. Only about 2,000 now, and like we were saying, even though they have, the Void Staff now comes in for Fly. So the mid lane advantage that was existing for Selfie has been equalized for the most part. That said, as you get later and later into the game, these carries become stronger and stronger. The one thing that you have to worry about, of course, is Reven and how he's going to stack up against the Kog'Maw.
Well, that's one of the things here. A lot of the gold on GCU is on Kog'Maw, whereas the gold on Tempo Storm is you have a little bit on Selfie. He's got a CS advantage in there. So you kind of have now the two players that you want the gold on have the gold here. As we can see Selfie taking it to solo just in a 1v1 situation. Mentioned no Lich Bane here, so his trade potential might not be there, but Reven's going to get caught out on the opposite side by MadLife and Santorin. Fly's going to come with one. Actually, Rikara snipes that one down. Wiggly's on the bottom side, able to chase through the blast cone onto solo and pick up a kill. They have to hightail it out of there and recall because the rest of GCU is pushing down the mid lane.
They're going to be able to pick this one up. It's a question of what else can they get after it. Are they going to fall back to potentially get more vision control on the Baron? They already have pretty good vision control, so a good timing by Tempo Storm. Baron was not up yet. They couldn't answer that kind of collapse onto solo with a Baron force. They're able to find that kill as here we see Reven once again just not taking a safe path through his jungle. A really poor game out of him, numerous times getting caught out of position. This time around, you know how much control you have on the top side by GCU. You know your team is making a play on the bot side. You got to wrap around the long way there and make sure you don't get caught out.
And we saw the Rek'Sai ultimate unable to be displaced through the blast cone, which is why Wiggily was able to pick up the kill on the solo, despite solo getting a little bit of airtime for himself. But Goldcoin United, you mentioned, they come out a bit ahead on that one. They're able to really fall back to a Baron as that one was not spawned on the map, but they do wind up getting themselves a mid lane tower. So the tower's actually all evened up right now. Tempo Storm was ahead in that pressure beforehand, something that I'm just missed myself, but now we'll increase the gold lead from about 2.5 to a solid 3,000. They might be going for a repeat play on the solo here. They bring Wiggily and Quas down to the party this time around. The Baron buff is not spawning for 10 extra seconds, so solo going down here could be detrimental. Is about to go. Mega's gonna get taunted up. Is he gonna be able to get ability off? He will wind up transforming, buying a little time for himself, but Selfie picks up that kill. GCU just have to wait for the Baron buff to spawn to respawn, and at the same time, Tempo Storm are gonna be getting a tower, potentially two.
Yeah, they're gonna get the tower, they're gonna get the inhibitor most likely, but GCU finishes the Baron extremely quickly. They're gonna get the recall off. The question is, how greedy does Tempo Storm get? They still have the man advantage, so GCU might not be able to actually force him out of the base. It does look like Tempo Storm's choosing to recall instead of fighting the 5v4.
Ooh, they got a hook on the Selfie, and they wind up bringing in Rikara. That's a lot of damage on Kog'Maw. Another legendary spree goes up, and Reven was trying to push down that mid lane tower, but GCU get a kill.
Tempo Storm do not retreat altogether. GCU using that home guard advantage, find a pick off onto Selfie, the Fed member of Tempo Storm. I love the idea of going bottom. It does kind of, it is unfortunate that you have to give up the Baron buff when looking for that play. I thought they were going to continue to play it more aggressively, as Reven once again not in the best spot.
He's the same level as Santorin. That feels bad.
Does not decide to keep running away. Instead, we'll probably take this 1v1. He's doing all right in it so far.
He's doing a good job, and he's going to get the ultimate in from Quas. He's going to try to flash after with the Chain of Corruption, but doesn't land. But at the same exact time, this is just GCU's go button to push down into the base. They don't need their Santorin if they just have nobody to stop them.
Right, Selfie's dead. That goes all your wave clear because the Varus is down in the bot lane. They're able to walk forward and just grab this mid inhibitor with that Baron buff as well. Now it looks like they're going to move up to the top side to keep this push going. And yeah, like I was saying, I like the idea of Tempo Storm potentially continuing to force around the inhibitor. Now, you do have to be really scared of solo respawning and teleporting behind you potentially if there are any wards deep and getting cut off. But at the end of the day, if GCU gets a little bit too aggressive and you win a fight in front of their inhibitor, you can actually potentially just win the game off that. So I wouldn't have minded a little bit more aggression, because if you just walk away there, it's nice that you grab 2 turrets, but the enemy team has Baron. They'll probably be able to answer back with more.
Tempo Storm unable to mitigate the damage from this Baron buff this time around. They didn't have it on themselves. They gave it over to GCU, and while they took a bot lane inhibitor tower, they lose a mid lane inhibitor tower and inhibitor for themselves. Now another Mountain Drake spawning on Summoner's Rift. This will be the last Elemental Drake we see before the Elder Dragon becomes a thing. Like I mentioned before, even the Dragon RNG wants to see us fighting over objectives and getting into these team fights here. Is 2 mountains now stacked up in addition to the 2 Infernals. An Elder Dragon, if this game goes that long, will pretty much seal the deal for GCU.
GCU has a huge wave moving with them in the bot lane here. Going to try and use that to force down their second inhibitor most likely. Tempo Storm having to worry about the mid lane as well at this point means this inner turret's going to go down, but they're going to mount their defense at the inhibitor. Could be a potential last stand depending on how aggressive GCU gets.
Baron buff up for 45 more seconds. Goldcoin United looking to go through the tower. The Flay lands. The hook does not. There's just zoning duties here for MadLife as they're able to take down that bottom lane tower. Bottom lane inhibitor might fall. MadLife gets tagged by the Tempered Fate coming out from Bard. Santorin does throw the Sejuani ultimate out, but they don't even need to follow up on a fight at this point. They just take the inhibitor and they back away.
Able to get the inhibitor and get out. Once again, good objective play by GCU. They have the Dragon's advantage, they have the turret advantage, and they should have the Baron advantage, all things considered, but that one's 1-for-1 right now. Only one inhibitor left up on the top side. You can expect to see them recall and probably group as 5 up around that as well. Not much for Tempo Storm to look to trade out for here. They are going to have a really hard time getting out of their base. And like we said, their team comp is basically 5v5. That's exclusively what this team comp can do. And from behind, the enemy team grouping up as 5 with more gold, more dragons, it's very difficult to win a fight.
You see basically triple the Baron power play coming out now for Goldcoin United. They're able to take multiple towers off of that one, in addition to cracking the base of Tempo Storm on 2 facets on the bottom and mid side of the map. See Solo could potentially go for split pushing duties, has his teleport available. As you mentioned, though, a 5v5 in the top lane wouldn't be too far-fetched from them, as they do have super minions pushing down on both sides of the map where the inhibitors are gone. Quas has already pushed out that bot lane for a bit, try to buy some time. It looks like the Tempo Storm, they have to see pressure on this outer tower. They can't really fight over this one.
Right, they can't fight over this one, but they do need to fight over their next inhibitor turret. If they end up losing all 3 inhibitors for free, this is going to be such an easy game for GCU to close out from here. Quas bought enough time to give them some opportunity to look for their best engage. They do have some wards behind. Quas has teleport. They might find something like that. GCU actually backing off a little bit further away. Don't want to give them that opportunity. Their sweepers are down, so they can't quite clear out this vision quite like they'd want to. They're going to use some pink wards to do so, making sure that these teleport angles are not completely available.
They got Solo chauffeuring the minions up into the mid lane, and that super minion wave on the bot lane is slowly but surely pushing onto their side in their advantage. Goldcoin United, Tempo Storm, this last team fight is really going to be about what can Selfie do now that his Lich Bane has been completed? What can the front lines do to keep their carry safe? And is Rikara just going to Kog'Maw all over the enemy team?
That is the scary thing. They have not really found a way onto Rikara in any of these fights, even though that they've done a good job staying even in this game. It has almost never been because they found Rikara to win. It's been a Baron steal, it's been some pickoffs onto Solo, and this whole time they don't have a good answer to Rikara. Not much backline threat, honestly, to actually find him.
They have a Bard Tempered Fate that's coming off cooldown in just a couple seconds. That's about the only way they really have to lock him down. They can chain that with some CC from Wiggily or Gravity Field coming out from Viktor, but that's still not guaranteed. As you mentioned, I believe it was in game number 1, where it was, or maybe even game number 3, where Tempo Storm didn't have guaranteed CC. They had to chain it together in a certain way, or they had to have a skill shot land in order to do so. And the best engage was they flash on Burrow from Rek'Sai. We see this kind of being the same case. They still have Chains of Corruption that could come out from Reven to really turn a fight around, but there's a Quicksilver Sash picked up by Kog'Maw, and there's a lot of beefy frontline to protect them.
Looks like GCU, though, has backed off their top lane push. Tempo Storm going to live for a little bit longer, at least. Elder Dragon will be the next dragon to spawn, as well as Baron in a minute, so they have all that top side control from that push. It looks like they're going to use that to recall, reset, and hopefully transition that directly into a Baron. Tempo Storm doing their best to get some of that vision control back in their favor.
There's still a lot of wards on the top side of the map for Goldcoin United, though, and there's a teleport available for Solo, if he so chooses to try to get something off, although he will be on the mini Gnar form so far, because he did just want to going back to base. Big items completed. Gargoyle Stone Plant and the 2 damage items there, with the Frozen Mallet and the Black Cleaver, had been acquired by Solo for quite some time. He has extra Spectre's Cowl to keep himself relatively healthy. Santorin has gone for a second Locket of the Iron Slaughter, and Mikhail's Crucible picked up for MadLife as well. So even if Kog'Maw gets CC'd and then blows a QSS and CC'd again, he still has the Thresh to Mikhail's him out of that and then Lantern him free.
The concern is if any of that CC doesn't get cleansed off instantly and he flashes out, if Selfie gets in range, even though he has a good chunk of MR, he might be able to get bursted right through that with Selfie, and hopefully Reven being able to throw some damage in over the top. But hold on, Wiggily caught out.
Get caught out. The Tempered Fate will land as the Galio Hero's entrance is able to lock down on MadLife. He wants to try to retreat through this one. Quas is going to jump in the backline. They've walked out on the fly, but not quite onto Rikara. Solo now going to Gnar Quas against the wall. But it's just frontline damage for frontline damage. The Sejuani ult has already been used. There's a redemption coming in from Sheik to keep Quas alive. His taunt lines are going through and nobody goes down.
No one goes down, but the base of Tempo Storm is under threat. The Super Minion wave from bot lane is on there again. And you see how fast GCU destroys this Baron with double Mountain, double Infernal. They grab that. They're able to get it just off that close team fight, but you see GCU not completely out of the woods yet. That bot inhibitor is going to respawn soon. Elder Dragon in 20 seconds. They're probably going to go for the double neutral objective before pushing in around Tempo Storm's base, but they have to be careful because as you see, the fights are still pretty close.
Yeah, pretty darn close. There's no flash available on multiple key members here. Mainly Selfie has no summoners available. Quas has no flash engagement for a taunt to land 100%. And there's actually still flash available for Fly. He only blew his heal in that fight. So no flash for Solo though for a follow-up engagement for a Gnar transformation. They're trying to lock down on the Quas immediately. Santorin's ultimate is available. There's a chunk of damage that gets thrown down on the Quas.
Yeah, Rikara just chunking through these health bars, tears through about a third of Quas's. And with that health advantage, they're going on to the Elder Dragon right now. It is still pretty scary. They do it pretty quickly.
Look at Kog'Maw damage on that thing. Even without the Bioarcane Barrage all charged up, he's still chunking through that. There's a Scuttle Crab in control for Tempo Storm. Can Wiggily be the hero and smite away another objective? Solo is exhausted for now. Tempered Fate lands on Rikara. This could be the chance to seal away, but it's going to be Gnar that secures that one. GCU now have a 4-stack Elemental Dragon burn, and Wiggily is paying the price for that one. He flashes away. The burn is on him, and Selfie's going to get jumped on. Fly picks up a kill on the backside as Wiggily finally goes down. Quas is trying to taunt everybody up, gets a decent amount of damage onto Rikara. MadLife is still in the play. Command Shockwave lands. Viktor's down. GCU win the fight. GCU are going to be taking game number 5.
An epic series between these two teams ends with nothing else but an epic team fight around the Elder Dragon. It was actually Solo who secured that one. A really nice Bard ultimate to cut the Kog'Maw damage from coming in. They have their chance at the 50-50 smite. GCU still end up with the Elder Dragon, and then that fight was still relatively close, and they needed every bit of damage they could to win that. Sheep running a little bit of distraction duty, but this is the end of the line for Tempo Storm. A great run through the Challenger Series, but cut short in Game 5 by GCU.
It's going to be an all-United affair in the finals for a second split mark. GoldCoin United come out ahead 3-2. It was a tough entire series, back and forth the entire time, but GCU, even in that game, back and forth for a while, and despite GCU having advantages, it never felt like they were so much farther ahead until those last objective fights.
Even then, you saw how close they were. That Baron fight, they actually didn't kill anyone. They just had to force them back, and because they had that bot super creep wave working for them, they could get the Baron for free. That Elder Dragon fight as well. I mean, if that's a situation where you don't get that Elder burn, and even if it's only a 1 stack on the other team's side, maybe they start being able to win that fight. It was super close. Once again, though, Kog'Maw was relatively unfocused in that fight. He is still super fed. Rikara might have been able to carry that fight either way.
Yeah, Rikara was very far ahead at that point. Only had 1 death, and that was for first blood, so he didn't die after the first blood for the entirety of that game. And we saw him dishing out massive amounts of damage. Solo kind of being a little bit of a hero, not necessarily unsung hero, because we were mentioning how his Gnar engages in that game were going fairly well. It was really just a team effort in that entire game from GoldCoin United. We said like we needed to see Rikara pop off. He eventually wound up getting fed, but he was on a Kog'Maw, so he had the support of his entire team to do that.
Yeah, Cog Orianna with a Thresh. That's a lot of defensive tools to cover him. So it was a great game by him. And like you said, a lot of these wins by GCU did feel like team victories. Really nice objective control whenever they were even or slightly ahead. You know, you got to give your hats off to Tempo Storm. They also played a great series. Selfie was able to bounce back super hard in Game 4 and a little bit in Game 5 here, as well as having a really nice game too. So it was a very tough game for Tempo Storm, just slightly behind for a lot of it. And it really did come down to that final objective control and team fight.
Yeah, we actually have a replay of that last fight as well, just to show you how close this game actually was to going pretty much either way.
And here you see, I was surprised to see GCU forcing this. It does feel like a little bit of an overextension, risking a 50-50 Elder Dragon here, but they are able to get the Kog'Maw, Bard ulted, and then there you see it's actually, like I said, Solo able to secure that Elder Dragon. Wiggily then CC'd up in the front line. They focus him down relatively quickly, and it's full retreat mode at this point. They continue on to Selfie, who is almost able to survive for quite a long time. This is where I was saying, well, maybe if they got the Elder Dragon, this is where they can turn the fight. But MadLife goes to the flank, has a really nice hook to CC him, as well as comboing the damage with Fly. They focus out Selfie, and once that main threat is down, it's an easy chase down for the rest of the team.
Yeah, and even though Tempo Storm wasn't able to come out ahead in that fight, they did hang in there for quite a long time. GoldCoin United, unfortunately, a little bit too strong in the later stages of that game. As we could see, it was relatively close for a decent amount of time, but as soon as that first Baron was stolen away, after that Baron buff expired, it was really Golcon United keeping control, but even then, it fell down and looked like Tempo Storm might be able to come back.
You can see that it was still a very back and forth game, despite how, GCU was in command for most of it. They did lose a Baron at points. There was that tricky pickoff situation where then they're going to potentially backdoor a bot inhibitor while the other team does Baron. Tempo Storm put up their best fight all the way to the end, but just came up a little bit short.
Yeah, and we saw that game was pretty much the Rikara versus the Selfie show, as we mentioned in that last team fight. Whoever wound up dying first was pretty much the team that wound up running away with that fight. And of course, we said these were all team victories, and so there have been a lot of great performances today. But the real standout player overall amongst every single game, you really have to give it to GCU's mid laner Fly.
He had a super good game 1 on that Corki pick, able to go deathless and get a ton of kills. And then he did have a couple rough games over the course of this series, but so did a lot of players. The big thing, of course, was the fact that he had a huge Game 5 on this Orianna pick. They threw a ton of jungler attention, and he did a really good job surviving throughout it. So even though he was heavily focused once Tempo Storm realized that their win condition was Selfie kind of popping off, for the most part, he had a great game. And there you see the score lines in those 3 victories that they had. 8-0-5, 5-0-6, and huge DPM for the first 2 games.
Yeah, specifically on the Corki pickup, and then the Vladimir game where he kind of ran away with it against that Zed matchup. Very good stuff coming out for Fly. Once again, we just say these are a multitude of styles that this guy can play. The Corki is very high DPS mid laner, the Vladimir skills well into the later game, and then the Orianna was on protection duties for the Kog'Maw in the last game.
And like I said, the important thing is understanding the role that you're kind of working in within that game. You saw how many mid lane ganks that they threw there, the multiple roams. He died once when they had a 4-man dive coming in, but that's pretty understandable given the amount of resources the enemy team is investing to getting Selfie a lead.
Yeah, and even though they showed a lot of things there in the mid lane towards GCU, Fly got the Player of the Series award, but of course it was a team effort, and I would like to welcome Rikara, the Kog'Maw, to the broadcast following their series win over Tempo Storm. First off, I want to say congratulations. It was a really close 3-2 series. How did it feel to be in that tense Game 5 situation?
I mean, there was a lot of pressure because going into the match, we thought we'd have a little easier of a time winning over Tempo. Obviously, going to Game 5 was pretty stressful for us because it's either do or die because it's semifinals, and if you lose here, you don't make it into promotion, so it's pretty stressful for all of us.
You had a little bit of a rough series, some good games, some bad games, and then your 5th game was the one where you really popped off hard. Was this something that you kind of stepped up to the moment, or was it just this kind of team comp that you got with the rest of your team because you got that Orianna pick this time? It was the first time you got your hands on it, as well as having the Thresh. You felt like the Kog'Maw pick was best for the comp, or was this like I'm going to step up and carry game?
I think for me, for Game 5, I felt like it was do or die. So I don't know, the adrenaline kicked in and I went ham. And it just seemed like for the first 3 or 4 games that Tempo was playing super heavily around bot side, and it was something we didn't really expect or have much practice against. So it caught us a little off guard, and I had to give up a lot because I wasn't used to all the pressure. But as the series went on, they seemed to gravitate more towards mid lane, so it got a lot easier for me to be able to play to my potential, and I was able to bust it out Game 5.
All right, and then talking about some of that mid lane focus, what was it like for Fly? I mean, we talk about how much he got ganked in the 4th game. They did that really kind of aggressive Rek'Sai pathing to get the first blood onto him, and then they snowballed kind of through that. And then Game 5 again, they started throwing a lot of attempts to kill him. Is this something where, as the Kog'Maw who's doing pretty well, are you talking to him being like, you need to calm down, we'll be fine, just I'll be able to carry late game as long as you do your best to hold on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously mid looked pretty rough from our team's standpoint, but I think Fly has so much experience in the game that he knew as long as he's soaking pressure and giving me time to farm up, that we'll be able to win pretty easily in the mid to late game with Kog'Maw, especially versus their team comp, which had a lot of tanks. And my team just played really well around me, giving me all the farm, trusting me, and trusting in me to carry the game later. So I really have to thank them for that.
And you mentioned the fact that your team was willing to play around you. You split time with MASH last split, and now you're coming into your first Challenger Series final. How is the kind of the team communication been? You're working with a bunch of veteran players. Fly coming in from the LCK as well as MadLife, and you have Solo who has his own experiences in the Challenger Series as well as some LCS experience from Santorin. So kind of just as a fresher face on this team, how has your overall experience been playing with these guys?
I think since last split, it got a lot better. I got a lot more comfortable with the team. It didn't feel like I was the only rookie this split, and I get to talk a lot. I feel like I can talk a lot more, more comfortably. Whereas last split, I struggled a lot to find my footing on the team. Where, MASH is a great shot caller, and a lot of people know him as a shot caller. So I really respect him, and I learned a lot from him last split. I feel like this split, I'm really implementing it into my play, and it's proving that it's working really well for our team.
When you're making it to your first Challenger Series finals, it was a tough best-of-5 series going down to the last game where you were able to bust out the Kog'Maw and hard carry. So I got to ask Rikara specifically, how are you feeling going up against United?
I think it'll be a close series, but I think we have the edge.
All right, well, I think that one United has the advantage over the other, so, you know, we'll have to see how that pans out next week. So I want to say congratulations, first off, on the close 3-2 victory, and good luck in the finals next week.
Thank you.
And with our series complete for today, let's take a look at the updated bracket. With their win today, Gold Coin United advanced to next week's finals, where they'll face off against yesterday's victor, United, in an all-United affair. We'll see who's going to be able to take home the title of the 2017 Summer Split Champion.
Very excited to see this, even though Rikara said he's pretty confident in the matchup. You got to say United did look like the better team. I mean, they did have a little bit easier competition. Big God Jackal is not quite able to stack up, but there are a lot of things to look at here if you're GCU, some potential blueprints to try and beat them. It did feel like they almost need someone else to carry. You know, they have this very objective control style game, and they try and win as a team. But sometimes if you get a lead on them and they can't set up all this control and you get into a scrappier situation, that might be a way that you can kind of break down all this communication that they rely on.
When we talked to Licorice yesterday, he said it was going to be a 3-2 in favor of Gold Coin United, and well, he was correct. So he's predicted his own opponent. So it's definitely going to be a bit of a doozy of a matchup, regardless of how these teams actually wind up playing out. A little bit more solo lane strength, or a little bit more individual player strength we touched upon in the matchup between United and Big God Shackles yesterday. Gold Coin United, a lot more team play. So it's going to be something that nobody wants to miss next week.
I think the big thing to keep your eye on, of course, is Dandy. He had a monster performance in his series, able to pop off very hard on the Kazakhs. And that's something that we didn't really see at all out of, you know, Tempo Storm here. So this is a very different look that Gold Coin United is going to have to prepare for.
Yeah, so that's going to be next week, of course, and that will do it from us here tonight. So on behalf of myself, Mark, and the entire Challenger broadcast crew, thanks for watching the semifinals, and we'll see you next week for the final. Get some burrowed on here. The Ignite is been used already, and first blood goes over to Reven. From the bottom side, a fight has been broken out. Santorin is around in the area. Quas is going to come in with the Hero's Engine. They're going to get a teleport now out of the Gnar. They can go down onto the Orianna. The command shockwave is used to pull Wiggily back underneath the tower. And these are the things that we talked about when he was subbed in, that he was getting caught out of position a little bit here, but you can't really fault him for this one. They lock down the Santorin and MadLife. MadLife has a flashback. Command shockwave lands on everybody in the back line. The Gnar against the wall is massive, and they don't even need a shockwave to clean this one up.
They're going to try and CC him up. He gets into the pit. He
steals it. He steals the Baron. Decent amount of damage onto Rikara. MadLife is still in the play. Command shockwave lands. Viktor's down. GCU win the fight. GCU are going to be taking game number 5.